Hello, Kansas City, and welcome back to another episode of Speak Up, only found on Televida. We're so glad to have you today, and today I am super duper excited because not only are we going to talk about our children, but we're going to talk about our children with an expert, someone who has dedicated her life to the early education of our children and the importance of it. I have the pleasure of having in the studio with me today none other than Ms. Deirdre Anderson, who is the CEO and president of Early Start. She's also my friend, and she's got a lot going on. So without further ado, thank you, Deirdre, for coming at the last minute even.
Well, thank you for having me this morning. I would never miss a chance to speak to an audience about why early childhood education is just vitally important to all of us, whether you have children or not.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I did a little research and I was thinking about, why is early childhood education important? What are we missing in America? And it was really interesting because I've known for years in European countries, education, the early education from cradle to third grade is the years that they find as their academic development time. And so for America, this is kind of what you're doing over there at Early Start. Tell us about Early Start. I know that's your baby.
So Early Start, known to many as United Inner City Services, we recently changed our name. We will forever be affectionately known as UICS, but Early Start really embodies who we want to be in the future, which is creating a firm foundation for all children and families that will propel them into their future. And so we have 3 early childhood centers, 2 in the urban core, 12th and Garfield, 39th and Troost, and then 1 in Pleasant Valley, Missouri, all the way in the Northland. And we are leading the way with an arts integrated curriculum where we are creating a culturally relevant experience for all of our children. At full capacity, we can serve about 320 children. Of course, the pandemic has hit our workforce harder than probably anyone's. And so we've had a challenge being fully enrolled because we have had a hard time attracting and retaining teachers. And so that is among one of my passions, is ensuring the best and the brightest are placed with the littlest among us, because when we do right what we do in early childhood, K-12 education, which is my former life, they're not playing catch up and trying to repair and work on things that didn't get addressed before children enter kindergarten.
Absolutely. And I've had the pleasure of touring the campus at 12th Street, and you are focused, intentionally focused, which I've found to be very inspirational. A lot of times, I think we have educational programs that have good intentions, but they end up being more babysitters than educational pieces. So what was interesting to me was the art. Why did you all choose art?
We can all thank Reverend Mann and others in the 12th Street corridor of when we built St. Mark's Center. We envisioned the next generation of artists that would emerge from our community. St. Mark has a full theater and stage, and we work to integrate not only at St. Mark, but at all of our centers. Our children are exposed to all genres of art, because art is a way of drawing out the creativity, imagination, and whimsy in children. And then, as opposed to looking at their temper tantrums or being withdrawn, you begin to see a whole nother face of children because they are so engaged in whatever it is they're doing. So our children are exposed to Kansas City Friends of Ballet, the ballet, the symphony, the orchestra, hip hop artists, graffiti artists, you name it. So lay artists, as well as professional arts organizations, have a home not only at St. Mark, but all of the centers. And then we have a full-time art educator that works with all the children. So I say this as a recovering parent. So my kids are not preschool age anymore, but I have grandchildren now. Yeah. And I had a lot of mom guilt when I first started doing this work, because I knew in my heart some of the things, knew some things in my gut. And I did many things right as a parent, but I think I'm probably a better grandparent because I know the science of it all.
Right.
Did you know that 90% of your brain is developed by age 3? So it's not just in other nations. If we don't value babies, by 3, much of their brain has already been developed. So the way you talk to a child, the way you engage with a child, at that formative age is absolutely essential, because that's the building block for everything else that a child is going to need to succeed later in life. The other major component where other nations have gotten it right, and we as Americans are a little behind, they have robust FMLA policies. They value the parent being able to stay home with their child when that's what they want. So as a community, we have to continue to think about, not just for the least among us who can't afford care, which is the majority of the population that we serve, but we have to care about how, as a parent, I can tell you my greatest stressors at work have always been, and at this age, they were always about, is my baby safe?
Right.
Are they learning?
Yes.
Does their teacher love them like I do?
Yes.
And so if we don't wrap our arms around this issue, we're going to continue to be behind other nations, because we don't value the family and the integral nature of the family in the way that we should. And that is why in so many ways we're behind.
You know, that is interesting that you should say that too, because that is every parent's, especially every mom, and I'm sure lots of dads, but every mother that has to go back to work immediately because of just the cost of living or survival means I have to find a viable daycare for my child. And do I want my child to just be in daycare, or would I like them to be in a safe environment where they're learning, where they are being loved, where their creativity is being exacted so that they can be who they are, but at the same time hearing that they are valued. And it's really important, because I look at even now the frustration of parents. I've been in the grocery store or in the mall, and the frustration of parents with everyday life sometimes rubs off on the children. Oh, yeah. So what you just said about the development of a child's mind between cradle and 3, it really kind of starts to build the character that they will be, depending on how we talk to them.
Mental health is formed at this age.
Wow.
They have done studies where you can see, based on the affect of an infant who has not been talked to, read to, given eye contact, whose mother or father or both are depressed, you can see that same affect develop on that infant. And so if we want to have a violent-free community, it starts at this age. Yeah. They actually say by age 7, much of violent behavior is ingrained. And so I always use this analogy of that temper tantrum you see in the grocery store. That temper tantrum turns into school-based violence, turns into community-based violence, turns into shooters, turns into domestic violence abusers. It turns into so many other things.
Yes.
So what we're doing also, a couple other components of what we do that I left out, which is we're a trauma-informed care site, and we believe in, first of all, focusing on the adults in the children's lives.
Yes.
Our staff, as well as the parents, and ensuring that they're self-regulated enough to be what children need. And then the second is teaching children the same thing. Much of it just starts with some basic deep breathing. If we all just stopped, took a deep breath, counted, did some other things, we might not pick up a gun. We might not go after our coworker.
Right.
We might not do some of the things we do. So what we know is that the more children that are exposed to an environment like this, the more capable they are once they go to school. However, we need the same in the K-12 setting, because when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So when children leave us and they go to another environment that doesn't build upon the foundation we've laid, you will see a regression in their behavior.
Yeah.
The other component that I left out is just the support of family services. Now, we're not trying to be all things to everybody. So early start is intentional. We start early with families and with children. Whatever additional supports and services they need, we want to be a connector. We're not a food pantry.
Right.
We are not clinicians. We are not medical providers, but we know those are needs our families have. And so we do a comprehensive assessment and allow families to set goals. And then we connect with other community-based nonprofits. And we're a microcosm of what, if we collaborated in this way at a larger level in our community, it'd be amazing to see what might happen.
So, that kind of segues into the purpose of the show is to talk about how do we rebuild our ecosystem or our village, and those things, providing resources, kind of what we did as just a village. We were resources for one another, and if I needed something, my neighbor or the lady across the street or the family around the corner was there to help lift us up or help to guide us in the right direction. So in your collaboratives or your partnerships, you were saying that, no, you're not a social service agency, but you do have partners or collaborations that you can direct your families to. So I'm going to kind of segue into something that a lot of people don't know. You say that you're not social service, but you're always thinking of the community. And 12th Street is in the heart of one of the most underserved and lowest incomes in the Kansas City area. And
I call it economically vulnerable.
Economically vulnerable. I like that. And so there, you guys just recently, and I don't know how recently, but you obtained this Sarah Rector House, and now you have control of the church behind it. What is your vision for that? What are you going to do about that?
Well, first of all, let me tell you who Sarah is, because many people don't know.
Absolutely.
Sarah Rector was a Creek Indian, which means she was a Black Indian, and the Indians were better to their slaves than the white man was. And when the Oklahoma Territory became a state, the Indians gave their slaves a plot of land. Well, when Sarah Rector was given her plot of land, oil was drilled on it when she was about 12 or 13 years of age. So overnight, she becomes a millionaire.
Right.
She's effectively and affectionately known as the first Black female millionaire in the world. And so when she settled in Kansas City, this home that Early Start owns on the corner of 12th and Euclid was where she lived. And so it is our vision that we will reimagine and restore that home that will do two things. It will preserve Sarah's story, it will preserve some of the 12th Street corridor story, but it will also be a hub and a location for us to do workforce development, community organization. We're going to ask the community to engage in a visioning process with us. Well, I would never say that I know what all should happen there, but if we don't engage the community, then we're designing programming that they won't connect to.
Correct.
So the way I look at the work that I do, we're only as impactful with children as we're connected to their families and to the neighborhood and to all the other places that impact that child's life. And so it is systems coordination, resource coordination at its finest.
Yeah.
Education doesn't exist in a vacuum, nor does housing, nor does employment, all the various life issues that we all face on a day-to-day basis. At the heart of that is a child, is a parent, is a community, is a neighborhood. So we pride ourselves on hiring the majority of our staff, live in the neighborhood, used to live in the neighborhood, used to go to one of our centers. We're a parent who fell in love with what we do, and we work to develop them so that they can then be the carrier of what we do. Whether they stay with us for life or not, effectively we have given good tools, knowledge on basic child growth and development information that will carry us longer, further, and faster. Now, what I would say is most important, though, is for the community to really, we're not a daycare. We are a school for children under the age of 5. Daycare is important. Daycare is a basic nurturing and support. But I think a lot of those daycares would love to do what Early Start does.
Yeah.
We need to care about where all children learn. Children are learning.
Yes.
The question is, what are they?
Well, what are they learning?
And are they being developed appropriately? And so we want to be a support and a resource to the small mom and pop childcare center or the grandmother who's caring for her grandchildren. You know, we've done unintentional harm to children.
Right.
Sit down, shut up, don't do this. Why? Because we didn't do, and I did the same. At my best, I embrace all the things that we do. At my worst, I revert to all that old school sit down, be quiet, do as I say,
Yes.
not as I said. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and it's time that we do better.
Yes.
And you know, not to get deep, but I believe these are seeds of slavery because we feared our children's survival.
Yes. Yes.
And that's a very real thing.
Yes.
But in addition to caring about their safety, we have to care about whether or not they're prepared for life. And if they're not learning,
Yes.
they will not be prepared.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, wow. You know, there's so much, because there is so much. This is the beginning of how we, number one, break the negative narrative and the cycle of our children going into a mental health state. I look around our city now as a Kansas Cityan who grew up most of my life. I was here. I was born in St. Louis, but I spent probably from age 4 and the rest of my life in Kansas City growing up. And so when you look in neighborhoods now where we don't have children playing and riding their bikes and playing in the yards and going off in groups of kids, and they are in areas where there is blight and trash, and your neighbors are not even caring. That's a mental development, and it causes depression. So how do you combat that? Because that's a big, it's a big problem even in our public schools. So we can send our kids to schools, we can have the best teachers, but if the environment at home is not mirroring the environment that we put our kids in, we can say, I want my kid to have the best education. But if we're not giving them the best home life, how are you combating that? Or do you?
I think we make excuses as educators. We blame the home, and we know and can do better. So I think that's a limited mindset. I don't believe, I moved to Kansas City in 97. I don't believe, based on the investments that we've made, that we have demonstrated that we value children in this community, because the investments don't show it. Yes, we have started lots of schools. The question for me is, who's performing? So I think a lot of families have chosen to go to private school. I'm one of those. At one point, I did have my daughter in private school, because when you're paying, people respond to you differently.
Yes.
When you're making demands and advocating for your children. But our entire education system is set up with a limited view of the value of the family in addition. So we tend to make a judgment on whether or not that family cares. As a nation, there's so many angles you could take me answering that question, but I would also say we created an education system in an agrarian nation where there was one parent at home and able to more effectively engage with our education system.
Yeah.
That's really not the nation that exists today.
Yes.
And then when you think about pre-pandemic, we already knew we had workforce challenges. We already knew we had access to quality care and education for children issues. Women are not returning to the workforce at the same rate as men are. Why? Because they don't have care or care that they trust for their children. So they're piecing together their career, and that makes it even more challenging. Now, hats off to the men that fully recognize their role in their children's education. But I too have to develop my staff to say, just the same way you're engaging the mother, you need to engage the father in the same way. Don't assume that father doesn't want to know. We've got a long road to toe to make sure that men and women both understand, men knowing their child's, what their children should know, learn by age, whatever is both parents' responsibility. The other side of that is that none of us have done it alone.
Right.
So we need a grandparent, an auntie, a neighbor, a church. We need that village outside of the parent unit.
Yes.
And I think the other part of this is in this pandemic environment where mental health is on the tip of everybody's tongue, and we're all challenged to like maintain our mental wellness on a day-to-day basis. Think about babies. Most people do not realize postpartum depression can be up until age 3 and 4. So mothers, like for anyone, if I didn't leave you with anything else, for every woman that has had a baby, we all need to be checking in, all asking, how are you doing? Do you need a break? Can I go to the store for you? It's not easy raising a baby in a normal environment, but we're not in a normal environment anymore.
Yes.
Like all of us are trying to figure out what's the new life we're going to live. What's our new normal?
Yes.
And even if we only said, oh, there's a baby in that family, who's taking a meal today? Who is going to run to the store?
Yes.
Because sometimes even just taking a shower is
It's a lot.
And then I love this resurgence. I have a new grandson, and my daughter is nursing. But you don't get a break when you're nursing.
Right.
It's like
absolutely, I know.
Your whole
yes,
life,
I know. I nursed both of mine. Yes.
And so even making sure the fruit's cut up so while you're nursing you can eat. Or clean your house. It's just it is a lot for us to think about and consider, but it's doable if we, as I said, value our children.
Yeah.
And I love that Sly James put on our radar, more people's radar, not only the importance of pre-K, also the importance of what children should be able to do and read by 3rd grade. Let's back up. Let's back all the way up. What do they need to be able to do before age 3?
Yes.
What is the foundation that's needed? Because most of our efforts have been put into expanding preschool. But long before they get to preschool. If I get a child at 3 and 4 years of age that goes into one of our classrooms, our teachers are like, wow, I wish I would have had him as a baby.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because so much of their personality has been formed, so much of that temper, so it takes us just about the time we're thinking we're ready, then they're going on to kindergarten.
Right.
And, if we had them, even if it's not full-blown enrollment with us, just parents knowing and understanding, every time your child cries, you don't have to jump up. It's good for them to develop their minds. It's good for them to learn how to soothe themselves.
Yes. And just to go back to the difference, and I hate to say behind, but we are kind of behind when you look at other countries. So I remember when I was probably in high school, I did a research on education. Actually, I was looking at colleges and looking at foreign colleges or going to school abroad. And one of the things that I learned about Germany, that kids, when they go into high school, they're already studying for their profession. Mm-hmm. So if you were going to go to medical school, you came out of high school going straight into medical school, into either your residency or whatever it is that you go into after you get out of medical school. The same thing with law school. You came out of high school going into the practice of law. Mm-hmm. So, or any profession that you wanted to be in. If you were a fireman or a policeman, when you graduated, you went straight to the police academy or to the fire academy. So then I started studying in Asia. I think it was about 20 years ago. They had the big special on how at birth or even before birth, they are talking to the baby and developing its culture, the love of music or art or reading, and they're exposing the baby.
In utero is like prenatal. There's much to say about what you do prenatally.
Yes. And so a lot of people think that is a myth, but statistically, when we look at the numbers, and even in Africa, I was in Africa in January, and I went to a school, and these children, I found that a lot of these kids will not go past 8th grade because they can't afford the tuition. However, these kids they have out-tested ACT from our high school students. And I mean high scores. They could actually leave the 8th grade and go into college. And so it's the development and the education. And again, like you said, how you talk to your children, I think even in areas that we don't know about. As Americans, or as even just general residents, or just us people, what do we need to get back to?
Well, one of the big differences in we don't value teachers as a whole in America the way that they do, but like it's the highest level in society in other nations. It's not, that's not the way it is here. And in early childhood, it's even worse. The average wage in the state of Missouri is just somewhere in the area of $12.50 an hour.
For a teacher?
For an early childhood teacher. Okay. $12.50. Okay, so part of where Early Start is headed is being in a louder voice around advocacy. We have no one that makes less than $15 an hour at our organization based on a board that is committed to being a leader in this area. However, it rests on the backs of me doing fundraising.
Yeah.
So I say this is the current civil rights issue of our nation. If we value this profession, and we're not even really valuing it as a profession because many people really just still relegate the average child care and early childhood worker as being the help. We're more than the help. We do more than white bottoms. We do more than feed babies.
Yes.
We are developing and molding their minds. And so we have the tension of business leaders because their businesses cannot effectively operate in this environment when there's no place for their staff's children to go. But meaningful investments, and not just for the Early Start, but as a collective. There are other peer cities that we can look to that are further along where within city government, this is prioritized as an office, as a position that's working on family-friendly workplace policies and things of that nature. We have some starts of heading in that direction, much of which I credit to Sly James.
Right.
I would love to see our current mayor put more emphasis into the space and not calling Quentin out, but can't help it. You got a new baby. I know you see the value and the importance of it.
Yes.
And yes, he's got his hands full, but this is central to everything we do, has everything to do with how our economy will thrive, who we will be as a city in the future. And my hope is that we'll get back to the basics, as we say. We say we do the basics, under the age of 5. Let's get back to the basics as a community, because women can't go to work, men can't go to work that have children. And much of the workforce we're trying to attract have children.
And then on top of that, and when we talk about retaining staff or getting staff, you're in competition now with manufacturing and warehouses. So when you have warehouses, fast food. When you have fast food and warehouses and manufacturing, that's paying twice or at least a decent salary. If I can make $20 an hour going to Amazon,
come home at night and
not be stressed. I don't have to. But I'm going to make $12.50 or $15 an hour to work in a school and to deal with some of the issues as a teacher. That's a pretty.
I think that sometimes when I have this part of the conversation, it becomes a little bit overwhelming. I'm a glass overflowing person, and so I just take it back to the baby's eye. Just one conversation, one grant, one project at a time, and just continuing to just try to be a voice. Because I'm a single mother, raised both of my children by myself. I had a mother that was available. I also have so much educational privilege that I know that my life's experience as a single parent is extremely different to many of the families that I've worked with, but it's not impossible. And I just know that when we effectively advocate, teach, expose, and provide opportunities, that as a community we can be stronger. And I won't give up because I know that this is what I've been called to do.
Absolutely. So I know that there is a fundraiser, an annual fundraiser coming up. Really excited about it. It'll be my first year that I am going to be a part of that. The chamber is going to do something. I'm going to make sure of that. However, I want you to look in that camera right there and invite everyone and let them know what the funds will do, and tell us about it.
Early Start will be hosting our annual Little Learners Luncheon on Friday, September 23rd at Arrowhead Stadium in their amazing conference space. What I'll say is that it is a time to see the magic of what children create. There will be a gallery of art available, of our children's art, of seeing how talented our children really are. It's an opportunity to engage with others who care about early childhood education. If you want to learn more about Early Start, it'll be a great opportunity to do that. If you go to earlystartkc.org, you can get more information about our luncheon. If you can't attend, you can always make a donation. The funding that we will be raising goes to our Little Learners Bobby Jean Fuller Scholarship, and that allows for no family to ever be turned away based on their ability to pay for services, whether they are eligible or not eligible for any of the subsidies that might be available or the Head Start services that are available. We know that it's not an easy thing to pay for childcare, and so we don't ever want to turn somebody away because of that. Friday, September 23rd, Little Learners Luncheon at Arrowhead Stadium. Hope to see you there in some form or fashion as a supporter.
Well, it's almost the end of my show. I want to thank you, Deirdre, for coming on, for talking about what's important to us. And this is the start. That's why it's start in there, early start. I've been trying to figure out, how do we start the rebuilding of our community? And the old adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So let's start with our pups.
Right.
And let's start building our next generation to lead us and to bring us back to a total and complete village. Thank you, Televida, for always being there for Speak Up. You can only speak up on Televida. If you're interested in being a guest, please feel free to call the Heartland Black Chamber of Commerce. You can reach us at 913-948-7680 or email us at info@heartlandblackchamber.com. This was another great segment. We want to thank Deirdre, and check this out. She will be back. Have a great day. Bye.